Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided, since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us.
Welcome to Offline Intermission Part 2, where Scott and I continue our discussion on how to alter our own approach to talking about horror movies.
Here's my thinking on this, Phil, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here. There's a reason why you and I disagree about Quiet Place and a Bird Box.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent some time over vacation thinking about it. I was reading other people's blogs and everything. And what made me really key in on this was on Twitter while I was gone, a big argument started over, can horror take place in space? People who honestly believe that horror cannot take place in space. I mean, to me, I think it's so visceral that maybe we're trying to do this the wrong way. And maybe it is, what was our emotional response
Mm-hmm.
to the movie, right? So instead of trying to go, hey, the characters, because I can't figure out a way to grade these things. And again, we're trying not to score, we're trying not to grade, right? So what about this movie created that response, that you had that would make you say, this is Bird Box over Quiet Place? And here's why. Here's my emotional reaction to this movie. Because if you read through this, where I really started thinking and going on this simple is that quote, that last, it wasn't his last, but it was his fourth to last journal entry. To this day, I can read it and it almost brings me to tears. I can read it and right now, you can't see it, but I get goose bumps because I feel that. When he is going, in the name of God, please don't leave me here. That is an emotional response that digs at me all the time. I read that book probably 15 years ago, Simple. I still wake up sometimes thinking about that, what he wrote in there. It had that kind of response to me.
Instead of asking the question, is it Bird Box or Quiet Place? Is it your Bird Box or Quiet Place?
Right.
Isn't that fundamentally what's wrong with traditional reviews as well?
That is because there was no. So if you look at a movie, they are judging a movie based on cinematography, character, all of that. I've never heard somebody come in and talk about the emotional response of a movie. Now,
True.
I've heard that when you talk about Academy Award films, Shawshank Redemption, the end of Shawshank Redemption. I cannot watch that movie, Cynthia, without crying at the end of Shawshank Redemption. I mean, it's horror. We don't talk about the emotional response that we get from horror other than, oh, well, it scared me shitless. Well, why? What was it about this movie that gave you such a visceral response that you would say this is horror, right? Because you and I have talked about this before too. Blair Witch Project, to this day, Senthil, I'll watch Blair Witch Project and it freaks me out. It's because it actually feels real to me. It's one of the only ones I've seen that feels real. A true kind of that lost tape documentary. It didn't feel scripted. It was like, just in the moment. And I could feel myself being in their shoes, right? You're lost in the woods, you can't get away, you've tried every which way, and there's something fucking stalking you. And you're going to die. It's just a matter of time before you're going to die.
In the case of Psycho, the music, in fact, does lend to your reaction, right? Your emotional reaction to that movie.
See, but to me, Simple, that's what we've been missing, I think, is what about Psycho? It wasn't, if you go back and watch Psycho, it's not overly scary in the idea of it, but that music when he's stabbing her, there is it is a tense, drawn out moment, even though, you're seeing blood, but of course it's not blood. It's like that black syrup going down the drain, but it's happening and the music is intense.
It's a good point. It's what contributes to your emotional reaction, because if you take away the music from that movie, somebody did that once. Somebody published a version of Psycho that didn't have the music, and once you take away the cinematography techniques that
Yes.
Hitchcock used, it's just another slasher, and
Yeah.
it's not as effective, and you don't really care.
Right. Right. So that's why I was looking at, going, I think if we're going to get this right, it's got to come from inside. We've got to be able to vocalize and go, why did you or did you not find this film to be horror? And it's going to be emotional, I think, every time, because I went through and I tried to come up with a scoring criteria, and it kept coming up with the same thing: the plot, there's characters, there's sex, there's gore. Okay, that's great, but do you remember Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
Mm-hmm.
When they're all sitting around the table, she's the reporter and they've got her tied to the chair, and
Yep.
he's going around and bashing the other people's brains in with a hammer, and she's
Yep.
sitting there, she's screaming. That wasn't scary, but it was freaking horrifying to watch, because for back then, I think that was the late 80s. That was fucking unheard of. I had never seen anything like that. It was like Nightmare on Elm Street when the blood comes spraying out of the bed, right? And filling the ceiling with blood after drawing Johnny Depp down into it. I had never seen anything like that.
So really the question comes down to, I mean, even if we were to still based off the criteria, it's what aspects of that criteria evoked some emotional response.
Yes, right. Right. So again, this comes back to that Quiet Place and Bird Box. I think Bird Box is it's not a horrible film. It's just, to me, it's not what I look at and go, that's horror.
Is it your Bird Box or Quiet Place? That's the question at the end of the day, because it has different emotional reaction for each of us. You can't quantify. I shouldn't say you can't. It's difficult to quantify.
But what I'm saying, though, is to have the dialogue around why would the special be considered a horror movie? How would you rate that movie and even say it was? I mean, you couldn't even go. Was the characterization great? No. The idea was freaking bizarre. I mean, it was one of those things. And as you get to the end of it, the payoff was at the end, and of course, him humping his bed, pretending like he's getting it on with the blob. And then
There were lots of disturbing moments in that movie.
But that's what I mean, though. You see, that's the reason why I gave it to you, is because it wasn't so scary, but it was disturbing as fuck, Senthil. I mean, it was just one of those movies you're watching going, why am I watching this? What am I watching?
Disturbing can be scary. Midsummer.
Yes.
Not scary, but deeply disturbing.
Oh, some people say the end of Midsummer is actually that she should be happy because she's worshipped. That was another Twitter thing. There's a whole debate about Midsummer, whether or not at the end it was all that bad when she was going to be worshipped forever.
I think it has to be two-pronged. I think there has to be what we're doing right now, which is, what is our emotional reaction to a movie? And then there also has to be a consumable version of that.
Yeah.
And the only question is, I think we both agree that you can't rate by number or by stars. It was scary on a scale from 1 to 5. That's difficult to do. Yeah. You could get really nerdy and say it was scary because it had jump scares, it was supernatural, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You could get down to that level of detail if you really wanted to. That'd be one way. You could say yes or no, but the problem with yes or no is, was it scary? Yes or no? Oh, well, that's relative.
Right.
But so clearly, there's some common elements, because some horror movies are highly successful. They hit a common nerve.
Well, I will tell you, the common, I keep coming back to the ones that are highly successful have so take South Korea as the host, right? Global warming, shit gets into the sewer lines, it comes around, it's eating people, right? And it takes the guy's kid. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than that. What was another really popular horror movie? Like The Ring.
Yeah.
So to
First
me,
time I saw it was creepy as heck. Scared the hell out of me.
7 days. It's the knowing what's coming.
So, what was the scariest aspect of The Ring for you? and what was the most disturbing. They're not necessarily the same thing.
So I think the scariest thing for me was waiting, right? Because again, you know that in 7 days something's going to happen, but you don't know what happens. It's that build up and anticipation of, okay, yeah, whatever you say, 7 days, and then it's always in the back of your mind, this freaky phone call. It was like The Grudge when they would call and it'd be remember that? It was that
Yep.
weird sound. To me, those are the things that kind of, because you never know when you pick up your phone, you're going to hear that, right? So a great Blair Witch moment was we were out, Buddy and I went out camping. Somebody knew where we went, and Mark was clacking rocks together. Now, let me just tell you, that scared the shit out of me, Senthil. I'm not joking. That it has to be something. To me, a great horror movie is something. If you look at the Conjuring universe, you sit around and you talk to people and they'll tell you, no, I don't believe in ghosts. I mean, I'll be the first to, I mean, I lived in a haunted house in Alabama and I still go, no, there's no such thing. But there's a part of you, I think, in everybody that goes, but what if? What if I end up in a fucking house where it's haunted? And, you know, we always do the whole, I would just leave. Would you? Where would you go? Where, you know?
I've thought a lot about that. It's easy with, it's similar to 2020, you know, hindsight, right? But if you're in that, you're not really sure if it's actually happening. If you're going crazy, is it all in your head? Which was the interesting thing about Open 24 Hours that I found. I didn't know if she was really seeing those things or if it was, you know, in her imagination. In The Ring, you know what scared me the most? It was that girl.
Yes,
that
she was
girl, terrifying.
That black hair down across her face, crawling out of the, you know, coming out.
The Grudge, the little kid, you know, bent over backwards, coming down the stairs, that just scared the daylights out of me. I used to, this was why that, you know, when I used to watch these Friday night, late at night, all the lights off, I would leave the light in the hallway on, and Babs would get up and turn it off, and I'm like, okay, should I get up? Should I just stay? So, how about this as a suggestion? We should just have this kind of a conversation about the movies that we select for each other. Why, the fundamental question of why did you have an emotional reaction? If so, why? And just free discuss it.
Over time, we start to see, are there commonalities in what we're discussing that we come in and go, shit, that's it right there. That's what creates this movie.